G'day there, Signets and Swanlings. 2012 Premiership player Nick Smith here. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce a bevy of bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club, brought to you by Noddy and Stevo, a pair of red and white tragics. So pop on the kettle and settle in as the boys had an in-depth chat about the Swans' last game, the Swans' next game, and a little bit about footy too. This is Nick Smith signing off until next week's episode. But in the meantime, remember, be good to your bloods and they'll be good to you.
Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods. I'm your host, Noddy, and today I'm joined once again by Chris. How you going, mate?
Hey, Noddy. Good to have you back.
Cheers, mate. In this episode number 35, we're going to be reviewing the Swannies Round 6 game. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. Today, Monday, ANZAC Day in 2022, our Sydney Swans defeated the Hawthorn Hawks by 41 points with a final score of 16-13-109 to 10-8-68. First impressions, mate, what do you think of that?
Oh, that was an amazing game to watch in hindsight, knowing what happened. But it was a tough first quarter. Good to see them wrestle that one back. But it was quite a lot going on there. A lot of talking points have come out of the game. I think the first thing that I noticed from the game would be the speed of their inside 50s at the beginning. They were just doing an absolute number on our defense. We really struggled there. If you jump on any of those social media channels and just had a look at what was going on in the Swans fans' minds at that point, there was a lot of blood being asked for by some of the players in the defensive line unnecessarily. But that was, really tough. At the beginning there, they seemed to have pulled it together in the mids and got it back on the straight and narrow for us, which was really, really tidy. And the stoppages, the first quarter or first, I think, third of the game, we really were getting absolutely hammered. And it took a lot of effort by a lot of the players to grab that back. And so that was, for me, a beautiful moment just to see that kind of that slow momentum being forced our way until we just ran off with it towards the end there. What do you think?
Pretty similar, mate. Like in general, a rough/tough first three quarters for different reasons, but then obviously clicked into gear in the fourth and surged home for a pretty solid win in the end. Obviously, I think the day's celebrations were a bit soured with Paddy's collisions and Logan's to an extent. Obviously, both going off with concussions, so. As that happened, every time he went in, there were three of them, I think, I was holding my breath, and I'm sure other Swans fans, AFL fans really were all quite nervous. And then to see him go off, we'll talk about that throughout. So, that was a big thing for me. The crowd and the ground looked amazing.
Beautiful.
Like how often do we just see a Hawks fan or a Swans fan sitting on the boundary fence, smiling, drinking a beer, rugged up? It's just, I don't know. It's great. I just can't wait to get down there and actually see a Swans game live in Tassie, either at in Lonnie or Hobart. But I think you said you were considering going down. Is that right, mate?
Yeah, I thought about going down, but we've got some great friends of ours, Tony and Simone, down in Launceston, so that would have been great to go see them at the same time. But didn't quite pull it together quick enough. But would have been really nice. I've never been there to the ground there, so one day definitely.
Yeah, nice one, mate. Just a question without notice. So, is this the first time there's been two ANZAC Day games on ANZAC Day? It certainly feels like it's the first one for us, right?
Yeah, great question. Because as the game was coming on, in my mind, I just assumed it was going to be a Sunday game.
Yeah.
So when it's coming closer to the weekend, I'm like, okay, what am I planning for this weekend? And then notice there's a day game on the Monday. It was surprising. So I don't recall it. Maybe we haven't done it in modern times, but or at least the Swans hadn't played in the modern times, and so we've not really remembered. But I'm surprised, honestly. Yeah,
you and I went a bit bonkers, really, to be honest, because we're trying to tee up. We've got the big Swans group, right? And I went when I realised it was on the Monday, I was like, oh, let's get a pub, and then I couldn't even figure out from the people at the pub whether or not they're going to show the game. And this is at it's one of the premium Swans venues, because the Anzac Day celebrations, the 2 up and stuff. I don't even. And then you threw your door open, saying everyone can come over to yours. But I think everyone just sort of did their own thing. Where did you watch it today, mate?
Yeah, watched it in the living room with the cat. Had a great time. She heard me jumping up and around, screaming a fair bit. So she ended up taking a couple of walks to get away from me for a couple of times. And
just for the listeners, we're actually talking about a feline here, aren't we? Not your partner, Danny.
not my beautiful partner. No.
Okay.
The actual cat called Missy, who unfortunately has to be around me when I'm hollering when the game's on. But she's a good indicator of how the game's going. If there's not a whole lot of action happening, she'll be sitting right next to me. If there's a tense moment or a bit of a comeback, then she'll have to be outside because she won't be able to stand the kind of hollering that's going on in that living room.
Good stuff, mate. All right, what were your key takeaways for today?
Look, as I mentioned, the way that our back line was able to really do as much as they could, considering the speed that was coming in by their centres, they were doing a great job. I think Wingard was having Cunningham's number at the beginning there, but it was nowhere near as bad as people were kind of making it to be. If you have a look back on it, yes, at the time it was frustrating because it seemed like it was either Rampy or Cunningham. Their man was getting a laced out kick in front of them, and it looked like our guys weren't involved at all, and they very much were. Had a hand over them. They were half a foot away. When you have someone as skillful as Wingard, who is not even a small fella, he's 6 foot, so he's a decent sized guy, and he's very agile. He's very quick. He's an excellent player. And you've got Harry trying to mark him. If you're going to lace out a kick on the head of Wingard, and their defender's going to have no chance. It doesn't matter how good they are and who they are. So I think we really need to just take a step back. Remember that. And I think Steve-O reminded us this, that we're the fourth least points conceded in our team. So our backline is doing a very, very good job. And they have some very hard opponents to put on. So Cunningham in particular is taking the number one small forward week in, week out. Like we look back at the times when we revered, of course, the wonderful Nick Smith, friend of the show, and how good he is. And I think Harry, although I think he himself would put up his hand and say, yeah, I'm no Nick Smith, but damn, is he doing a great job. He really, really is. And I'm not saying that I don't have my faults. I called him out, I think, game 1 and game 2, perhaps. But since then, he's been very stable. And I think the backline's doing quite a good job. So that's one massive thing I took away from this one. And the other one that I noticed, last week I mentioned that I'd like to see how Logan's game starts to change. So how he's going to go out there and compete with a McLean, a Reed, a Buddy, all tools within that forward line. How is he going to get his own ball? And it seemed like, at least from what I saw, he managed to get around it a bit more. He had some nice pressure acts. He had a couple of tackles. And he ended up, having a couple of shots at goal himself, which was pretty tidy. But I'm positive to see there. Unfortunately, he took that knock, so he had to sit out the rest of the game. It looks like he's going to miss next game as well. But all positive signs on that front. And then I guess we've got a lot of tools, and we've got a couple of tidy smalls in Ronk and Bell and Wicks and, of course, the incredible Papley. So we've got quite a fight in that forward line, and I'm just wondering how are we going to do the best with it once we get the players we want back. So we're definitely putting it on the heads of our players. I find McLean had, I think, most contested marks in the game, which is grand. But we can't be just asking for that all the time. We do need them to be around the ground. We need them to drop the ball in front and get someone like a Papley or a Ronk or a Bell to pick up that ball and have that crack at goal, which they did. Ronk had his last 2 were doing exactly that. So I think that we want to be a bit smarter with the way we play in that forward line. I'd like to see how we transform that and how we can utilize some of those bigs, not just to be the contested mark grabber, but do something a bit more with it.
Yeah, mate. Well, we can actually we'll probably go through that a bit more in the last section where we talk about any potential changes. But yeah, I agree with you, mate. Like for me though, like the key takeaway and the stat really revolved around the evolution of the game and how we were converting, really. So, end of last year, that last quarter against GWS, we lose by 1. We kicked 7 behinds. I think it was 5 actual behinds and 2 rush, but let's call it, I think that quarter was 2-7. That's a conversion rate of 22%, and that was, at that point of the year, our worst in that whole year in 2021. The second quarter conversion today, we kicked 1 goal, 6. Again, I think there might have been 1 rushed in there, or maybe not, maybe just pure 6 behinds. But anyway, 14%. So that's worse than our worst last year, right? So it's a shocking second quarter. So go back, first quarter, they jumped out the blocks, 32 down halfway through first. We did well to get 3 at the end to close the gap. Shocking second quarter, with that conversion rate I just mentioned. Third was pretty even, and then we just absolutely blew them out of the water in the fourth, and that's the game really. Like scoring 9-2 to their 1-0. We had 82% conversion rate in that fourth quarter. We texted. I was very nervous. I didn't see how we could come back, and you're there saying, Mr. Cool, saying I was never in doubt. I knew, I was like, bullshit, mate, come on.
There's a bit of hindsight in there, no doubt.
Yeah.
I genuinely felt at that point that I'm like, you know what, I think we're going to claw this one back. So anyway, it's easy to say in hindsight, would I have said this had we lost? I don't know. We'll find out.
Oh, mate, I was just watching going, it was frustrating. It was tough. It was a very tough game, and we knew the Hawks were going to bring a good game. But, they just, I think they won the first and the second quarter, and then we effectively won the third by like a point or a point, and then we obviously blew them off the park in the fourth. So, and I'll shout out to Steve-O. I think this is where it is. So in the fourth quarter, if you look at disposal efficiency, we had 10 players who had 100% efficiency. And again, they're not racking up the ball. They might have had 2 or 3 or 4 touches, but they're using them all perfectly, right? And then there's another 5 with 75% or over, I think maybe 3 or 4 in the 80s, but the lowest was 75%. So we've got 15 players at 75% disposal efficiency or more. And that's just in the fourth. So everything has come together. So we're efficient, we're executing, and we're converting in the fourth. And that's it. That really was the game. So, I mean, I'm glad it happened, because otherwise it would have been a loss. But, stoked. We're obviously 5-1 now. We're sitting 4th in percentage only. So the Dockers, the Lions, us, and St Kilda are all equal second. It's a great position to be in. I think we've all heard the commentators give you the stats. If you won 5 games at this point of the season, you're like 80% chance to make the finals or something. And we all know that if you win, last year it was 12, but it's typically about 13 games in the year, you're going to make the 8. But, obviously we're targeting, higher than that aspirationally. So sitting well at this point. We've beaten a couple of higher up teams. We've got a really big challenge next week in the Lions, who are obviously also flying. But we'll dabble on that when we get to the team changes later on, mate. All right, favorite moments. What were your favorite moments of the game?
Look, there was probably one big moment that I really enjoyed watching. It had a really good contest on the wing. Row bottom tackle. Ball spits out. I've never seen Parker get so frantic to make sure that he had his hands on this ball, but he just grabbed his damn ball. Saw McLean on the outside, handball to McLean. McLean handballed it well forward. Really beautiful handball out to Warner, who just legit strolled pretty much from that wing to the forward 50 rather, and kicked a goal from there. And it just reminded me that if you give any of these young wingers or centers any space close to that 50, they're going to have a crack at goal, and their percentages are pretty tidy. So you're looking at Warner. We know what Parker can do. We've seen Juzzy at this game and other games. Heaney, of course, what he does, and what Mills did in the first quarter to score the first goal, the first point at all for us at that point. And then, of course, you've got Goulden, Blakey, who are other mad kicks, who are playing kind of behind that forward line there. So, yeah, it's really a dangerous spot to be, isn't it? Really, if you're going to give any of these players a bit of space close to our 50, they're going to have a crack a goal, and there's a pretty high percentage they're going to get it. So, yeah, this good leg skills, I think, across the board has been very, very nice.
Nice one, mate. I'm just going to keep it pretty simple this week. Obviously, the game was, today, and we haven't really had as much time as we would have liked to prepare for this. But I just thought Warner's 2 goals were classy, especially the second one. It looked like he just took both of them upon himself. So I'm going to kick these, and he did. And it just goes from strength to strength. He's got that real cheekiness about him, though, hasn't he? And it looks like he doesn't wear a mouth guard, but that's a separate conversation. Look, Ben Ronk, we're going to talk about him a lot. 3 goals, 1, I think. So massive game. Obviously he kicked 1-3 or something last week. Yeah. But he's getting scoring shots. He's making the absolute most of his chances, in the absence of Papley. And as we talk about small forwards later on in this episode as well, Heaney took a specky at some point. I think it was in the 3rd or the 4th. He's just doing what he does, I'm not sure if he converted that one, but again, these were some of the things that stood out to me. I had a quick look again through some of those stat lines there. We should probably also mention, we won the inside 50 fairly comfortably in the end. And that, again, I think it's going to come down to that 4th quarter where we just peppered them. We should also say we actually won the free kick count in the end.
We did 29-22, I think.
Yeah, which is uncommon for us. So
yeah, it is.
We've had a few lean weeks, and I still think we're sitting towards the bottom on that free kick differential, and Doggy's right at the top. Yeah. But you see all the Swans fans going nuts. We're at that point against the Crows when there was like 20 free kicks to 9 or something like that. Mate.
Look, I think it wasn't one thing. While we're on the free kicks thing, umpire dissent. Like I didn't watch any of the games from this round. I haven't got around to it. Kind of got busy. But this game, there was a lot of hands to the side. There was a lot of questioning of calls. There was a lot of like, what? I thought all of these were meant to be free kicks and 50s. What happened?
Okay, yes, I know. I think I know what you mean. I think even in today's game, and I've watched a couple of games this round, and there have been 50s for dissent. I'm not sure if there was any 50s in our game though.
No, not for dissent. I didn't see a single one.
But I think the arms out thing you're talking about, and I don't know if this is included in dissent, is that if the ball goes out on the full, or if it's deliberate, or if a player is appealing holding the ball, they'll throw their arms out. As kind of like what the umpires do when the man's holding the ball, and I guess it's not in question of a decision because a decision hasn't been made. It's appealing, but again, I don't know. It's a little bit of ambiguity there, isn't there? But
it is a bit one because at that point the whistle's already blown, right?
No, well, it can be just prior to. Okay, so this is where I think the ambiguity is.
If they're making the motion of like holding the ball rather, the motion, the hands together, and they go wide across you. If they're making that motion on an appeal, I think we can all day, every day go, yeah, that's that line, that part of the line in the sand is perfectly fine. But if the call's already been made and you've got Buddy putting his hands to his side going, why? That kind of thing.
Oh, but it's Buddy though, mate. So,
I know he gets away with it.
Special
we shouldn't be saying this.
Yeah,
he gets away with it a bit. But if it's, anyway, I guess my ultimate point here is I'm glad that the way he was umpired today was very good. I was quite happy. The few calls I wasn't happy with on our end, same with the other end. I think we got away with a couple. On a general sense, I thought it was done quite well. And I liked the way that the game went. It flowed on. There was no, you saw Heaney bite his lip a couple of times, not say anything. You saw Chad about to say something, and then his eyes just kind of went like, what? And then he just shut up and he got on with it. I think that's the level where the AFL is trying to drag to in terms of umpire dissent. I'm all for it. All the best. I'm hoping we do exactly what we're doing there, and it's going to feed down the ranks and hopefully help out with all the dissent going down the line. That's effectively allowing us to have more umpires for the future. That's fine.
Yeah, me too, mate. Like I think that like the way that our game played out, and I tracked it for the first few quarters. I think that they had a few more free kicks than us in that first half. But really, like if you think about it, they're playing a better style of footy, and let's face it, they smashed us in the contest in the first, especially in that first quarter. And we'll talk about Laddams later on, who ended up played really well in the end, but really got shown up in that first quarter, and we all did, not just singling him out. But it's like how the Doggies do it. They play a very competitive, aggressive brand, and they always end up on the right side of the whistle somehow. So there's something in that, and I think the Hawks played like that certainly for that first half. So it was what it was. I just think that as we're trying to be level-headed Swans fans and not just complain when we get robbed, when we have huge free kick differential. But this one went in our favour, so all we're doing here is just acknowledging that we actually won the free kick count this week.
Let's say no more. No,
let's move on. Let's move
on. Yeah.
All right, so we're going over to the ABOB medal now, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal. So the Bevies' best bloods this week in 3-2-1 points order were Millsy, Parker, Warner. All right, mate, kick us off with Millsy.
Wow, what can we say about Millsy? That was a perfect game by Millsy. I mean, he was everywhere. You'll go through the stats, but highest in disposals, was everywhere for the tackles, kicked him. Got involved everywhere. He seemed like he was absolutely everywhere whenever someone needed an out, whenever someone needed an extra man, had that extra person to handball to in order to get the momentum going forward. He was there. He was just willing this team to get this win. I can't say enough. How can he... We're like the praise that I gave him last week. What was that? The fourth gear in the VW Polo?
Yeah.
The VW Golf?
Yep.
Mate, fifth gear. He's found fifth gear. Is that even a thing? Like, do they have that? Anyway, whatever it is, he's just killing it.
He was driving the electric Golf this week, mate. He was just humming along silently, and just his efficiency. Look, he needs to be in AA talk if he's not. I think there's a little bit more acknowledgement this year in the AFL media. Look, he just 37 disposals. 90, let's call it 91% efficiency, 9 inside 50s, 5 tackles, 11 marks, that one goal. And really that was our first goal of the game. That was the one that got us. And that was from, as you're saying, that really good play from Paddy to Ronk to Mills. And that really got us back in the game that first quarter, which really sort of got us back into the game in whole. So it was a very important moment. 11 score involvements, 17 contested possessions, most on ground, 660 metres gained, most on ground. We didn't put it here, but he scored 162 in fantasy. That's massive.
That's huge. For people who care about fantasy,
excuse me.
160 is outrageous. Another thing that we can talk about him was, and you mentioned VFL, and you said it, I didn't, Noddy. VFL Media, on the footy, Fox Footy article that they wrote about the game today, the number one point that they said we need to take away from this game was that Tom Mitchell possessions are very efficient. Oh, is that what we need to take away from this game, is it? Not the fact that Mills walked over to him, shut him down, and then had a career best game himself. Like that, come on. Anyway, but the fact that Millsy can go ahead and tag a bloke and just shut his game down and then go ahead and just dominate the game for himself is just elite, unbelievable elite stuff. And just fifth gear. I mean, can he find a sixth? Who knows? But it's just doing an absolute number on him.
And he's very articulate, right? Like when he's interviewed after the game, he's very clear on what the message is at every break. He's obviously got really good communication between him and the group and the coaches. So it's really I always enjoy listening to him talk because he's got a very tough brand of footy and he's quite eloquent, and I like that sort of almost a clash, like he's very hard at it, but then he's very, very considered. And it just, it shows that he's a smart footy player. And roll on, Millsy, just having such a year. All right, Parker, tell me about Parker, mate.
Parker was just tough game by Parker. Got around it, all around it, got possessions, got his tackles to make sure he willed the team. It just seems like he was the one just trying to get them into that winning position, right? He was just a bit of everywhere. He rolled up front. I noticed up forward to have a bit of an impact there. I didn't quite do so. I mean, I don't even recall him scoring any, but He had his moment up there for a little while and then kind of rolled back into the mids and just did a number there and got us forward. So, yeah, it just kind of one of those quiet moments by Parker where he's just going ahead doing his own little thing, willing the team, being in possession, getting that inside ball when the rest of them kind of needed to have that extra space away to get out to the wings, and he just got it done. So,
yeah, mate, I think I 0-0, so no goals today, but he really. He was pretty prevalent. Like he had 29 touches, 80% efficiency, 22 pressure acts. That's the highest for the Swans. Mm-hmm. So, and he also was actually thereabouts in one of our most. Where is he? Let's have a look here. He was in the centre, the second most amount of times next to Laddam. So he was actually more of a mid this game, and that's probably why he didn't go forward and kick. If we think about the setup we had this week, we had three talls, and then we had Heaney and Hayward and Ronk and Bell as smalls, but then we had less of a need for Parker to go forward and kick goals because we've got more of those avenues. That sort of stood out for me, but he had just had one of those Parker type games, like you said. That incident you described earlier where he's just ruthlessly hunting the ball, and that's just the Parker that we know and the Parker we love. And he was at it again today, and it was really cool to see. Mm-hmm. All right, mate, let's talk about the Chad.
The Chad, look, we've been talking about the Chad pretty much every week. He's been at the very least, honourable mentions week in, week out, and we've just been continually saying that he's just putting up his name everywhere, and it just seemed that he was doing exactly that. Like he got blasted by Rampy openly on the pitch for not plugging in a hole where Gunston just had a walk on, just got laced out and just walked onto this, was 40 out with half an angle, with a little bit of an angle, and kicked a goal from the back of that. And look,
I don't know what he said to Rampy there. He looked like he took it well, but he's pretty cheeky. He probably said, "Oh, mate, come on, you could have gotten him."
yeah, well, you. No, but yeah, granted, Warner wasn't in the right position, but nonetheless, that's it is what it is.
He's still young. He's learning.
But that's what you need. You need a Rampy like that to tell him at the time. That's where you need to be. You need to be plugging in that hole. You need not to allow that easy kick on. So that's the leader doing exactly what he needs to do for the younger players, telling them exactly what needs to happen. And you know what? He did exactly that. He picked up his game. He got around. He came back really strong, kicked a couple of very tidy goals, strong in possessions and tackles. Like beautiful, beautiful time by the Chad.
Yeah, 24 disposals, third highest for the Swans. 5 tackles, also third highest for the Swans. So those two third highest there, we thought, deserved for a 1 point in the ABOB medal. 2 goals, 2 classy goals. They were my favourite moments of the game. He's got that leg speed. We became aware of that last year. He's really putting it together this year. His contested possession is pretty high. His uncontested is doing. He's supported by these up and coming mids as well, and I think I don't want to touch wood, but like the combo between him and the lad are looking pretty good. So we've got the Chad and the lad running amok in the middle, so that'd be pretty cool for years to come. Fingers crossed. But I thought he did pretty well there. Honourable mentions this week. We've got a couple. I think you've got 2 and I've got 3, or we can just share them around, mate. So feel free, go for it.
Yeah, I think I wanted to make an honourable mention for Rowbottom. I think he's been playing really nicely. I think I've said it a couple of times, I still rate his ceiling to be very high. I think he's still got a lot of learning to do. He's got a lot of body to build. But the way that he goes about it, he puts his head down and goes for that ball. He's ruthless on the tackles. He's really wants to get his hands on it, but he's also clever enough to kind of make sure that he's not just jumping onto everything. So I think I'm a big fan of the way he's going about it. I think this week was really tidy. 7 stoppage clearances, so most on ground. 7 score involvements. The numbers sometimes don't look as tidy as they are for, say, someone like a McInerney or a Blakey or a Gordon, but you got to understand he's playing inside as well. So that's a bit of skill to learn. And it's harder on the body, and it's harder to kind of get those clean possessions. So he may not have the highest disposal efficiency going around, but I think it's just a matter of time before that really starts to click up. And I think he needs to improve, but generally grand game.
I really see him as the one that's keeping Joey out. I know that he's being managed, or I thought he was just omitted this week, but yeah, I guess there was a bit of management involved. But I see Rowie as the one who's playing well enough to keep Joey out. So he's that Joey type player. You know, he might not have the physique of the Adonis that is Joey Kennedy, but he's as you're saying, he's tough in and out. He's I think they said like when his first kick came halfway through the second or third or something. So he's handballing out and he's tackling. And as you're saying, some of his kicks, he'd want some of them back. You know, obviously he had that shot on goal that missed everything, but, he's not the only person to miss goals. Buddy had a fair few behinds today and the guy's a legend. So, I think it's a good mention, mate. Like he's been pretty consistent. I do, and we'll talk about this next. I see him holding his spot, but do you also? Question without notice.
Holding a spot over Joey, you mean?
Yeah, I think so.
I think there's room for both of them. I think he's the kind of player that even if we're going to say just manage Joey, just say we're going to be managed Joey during the game, depending what happens. Like we're going to be playing the Brisbane next week and they're a very, very good outfit. So look, you can have them kind of sharing the time on the ground to make sure that we've always got someone out there. But then those kinds of players, they work better when they're around the ball and kind of seeing the ball and getting a feel for what's going on with the game. They prefer not to step away from being there if they can. So look, I see them both being, I can't imagine one or the other. Like, of course, if we're going to be playing the hardest team, let's say we're going to play the Demons tomorrow, I'm throwing Joey in there every single time. Yeah. But I think our best team has them both in it, though, for sure. Look, one thing, a stat with him, with Rowie, he's coming 10th in the league in tackles. Yeah. So that's huge. I think Heaney's 8th or something like that. So he's
that's mad, hey?
It's insane.
Heaney's coming 8th in tackles.
And Heaney, the guy who's meant to be running around taking speckies, right? Yeah, is wild. But then, Rowie, he's doing his job on the inside. He's very much getting that pressure on. So, love the kid. Awesome. The other one that I'd probably mention, and quick on this one, would be McLean. I think we're so lucky to have someone like a McLean in the game, in our team. As we're building up Logan, with Reed kind of in and out of the team, and with Buddy, of course, doing what Buddy does, and Amadi, of course, with the concussion and the hammy and whatnot he's had. No, it was hammy. It was a groin issue he had at the beginning of the year. So we're super lucky to have McLean. 5 contested marks, most on ground. He had 4 1%ers to, as a big forward. That's kind of some interesting stat to have there. 7 score involvements, 6 hit, so even, got around it, make sure he was a ruck option there. So, I like the way he's going about it. I would like to see him feed the ball a bit more to the smalls. Maybe that's a skill set that is something still to learn with him. But I think that if he's big enough and he's tall enough and he's competitive enough to get his hands around the ball, if he can somehow find a way to get his hands on the ball and at least drip it into position where someone like a Papley can jump on it, I think his game is going to improve significantly. And that's the kind of thing that Reed does. But I think if McLean can add that in, it is youthful and his big body, then that'd be very, very big for him.
Do you think he just backs himself in with his marking though, mate? Because Reed also once upon a time, and even this year's beautiful mark, but you can't always get 5 contested marks a game like he has this game. But do you think in his mind it's just like, I'm backing myself in, I'm taking this mark?
Yeah, I think so. And but that's what it really comes down to, isn't it? Like, I think, was it last week we said that Reed and him were kind of battling each other to get to that same ball. So McLean's really dragging an extra body in, like 2 extra bodies into a contest where Reed arguably would have won because he's in front. So it's just, for me, it's just a matter of learning. It's just understanding the scenario. So if I come off the side here, I'm going to make a bigger impact on this contest. If I come up from behind, is one of my guys in front? Am I just causing mayhem where I don't need it to be caused? Or if I'm in a decent position, but I know that I'm going to get my hands chopped around me, then do I just look ahead of me and just try to drop it in front for one of the small forwards? So I think it's just a matter of him learning the position, having more time and just getting some excellent feedback from some of the better coaches we have there, I think is, again, another one. His ceiling is quite high. I think we've only starting to scratch the surface of how much impact he can make on the game, not just as a player, but just the game generally.
Yeah, nice one, mate. I'm on the McLean train, well and truly. So I have 3, and I'll just be real quick. Ben Ronk has done everything possible he could to stay in the team. 3-1, 15 disposals, 4 inside 50s, a presence again.
Yeah.
He didn't. Don't know how many tackles he had, but his smarts around goal, they're not as good as Papley. But if we had those 2 guys firing, that is some serious, potent small forward danger.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is. He's a very smart small forward, I think, and I think he had what did we say earlier? 3 or 4 behinds, or 3? Yeah, 3 behinds last week. 1 or 2 of them hit the post. So in his limited games back, and we talk about it every week. The 2 toughest positions on the field are small forward and small defender.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been speaking about Ronk and Bell and Wicks and Cunningham and Lloyd and all these guys. They're in the very those positions that don't have that glory, and so when they don't convert, everyone thinks they've had a bad game, but really they're there for other things like pressure acts and 1%ers and forcing turnovers and stuff like that. So when you do then add some stats to that, like scoring 3-1, and can I also say that I think it was his goal, him and Chad's goal at the end of the 3rd quarter, that really led us in to the 4th. And then just the floodgates opened.
Yeah, totally.
So look, I think he had a massive game again, and I think, and we'll talk about this next, I think he absolutely holds. But anyway, Laddams, 34 hit-outs, most on ground, 5 inside 56 clearances, had a slow first quarter, really came back into it, and looked really good for 3 quarters. So another really good backup game there after the Eagles game last week. Buddy, King Bud, 18 disposals, 3 goals, 4 behinds, 10 score involvements. Look, King Bud, what are you going to do? You take the good with the bad, don't you? And look, he's kicked 1,000 goals and 700 behinds or something like that, right? So
he knows how to do it.
Yeah, like whatever, mate. We love you. So, but he was pretty active, and he's looking good, and it was a different setup. Obviously, you mentioned earlier about Reed and Hayward, McLean potentially not really reading each other well, but I think that the structure there was pretty good this week. I think the commentators were saying there was a bit buddy centric at times, but then you've got McLean who can run a mile but also take a pack mark, and then you've got Logan who's doing some serious miles as well up and down the wing. So it is a shame that he's out with a HIA, but it's not like we don't have guys to step in. It's just whether or not they're going to gel like they did today, let's call them, in the 4th quarter. All right, mate.
Yeah. On the buddy position, though, like I was also on the effect, and I think I said that at the halftime report, that we probably go to him a little bit too much. But one of the commentators did say, had he kicked the 4 in the first quarter, would we be saying that? No, of course not. Of course not. So, like, who are we? Who are we to kind of mention that? I think if he's getting his hands on the ball and having a legitimate shot at goal, then like they're doing the perfectly good job. And
he's just a full forward kicking goals in that scenario.
That's totally. And I think it's just the fact that it's got the King Bud kind of mentality, and every time we kick to him, we're like, we're kicking into his too often because he's a star player. But if that was any forward, and you could say the same thing about McLean when he was the only tall option in the forward half there. So no, I think the game plan is going quite well. If Buddy had kicked just 2 extra of those in that first quarter, we would be in a totally different position halfway through that game, and we'd be kind of talking differently right now. But I think that was a really good point to be brought up by Sarah Jones on the Fox Footy, I think.
Yeah, I think so. 3 goals adds to his tally there. He's kicked 100 goals at that ground, which is the 4th highest tally of his at a ground. So it's MCG, I think the SCG, then Docklands, Marvel, and then York Park, Launceston, Utah Stadium. So it's kind of an interesting one. But majority of those would have come when he was a Hawk. But still, he does like to score there. So it was a shame that we only saw the 4 behinds. But it didn't matter in the end because it's more about the W. And he kicked 3 goals, equal highest for us, him and Ronk. So no complaints there. All right, mate. Hot topics. Here we go. How do we pull up after the match? Any MRO? What changes are we going to make? How's the VFL? let's have a general chat, mate. So obviously the two biggest ones there are Paddy McCartan and Logan McDonald, both failing concussion tests. Paddy's were visible. There were 3 separate incidents. As we've mentioned, he did what he's been doing in the first 5 rounds of this year, gliding in, intercepting beautifully. But I think you picked it really well in one of your first comments tonight. The pace at which they were coming inside, he would drift in, but there was already a pack reading that. And there was these collisions that, he was very slow to get up from, 3 of them. And so the third one was that knee, wasn't it? Wingard, the knee to his head. And then there were, of course, those very personal scenes of him down in the locker room after or during the game, which I personally don't think that we need to see. But nevertheless, I think it's all good, right? You got a quote there from Horse.
Yeah, look, Horse. The words from Horse was he's fine, but the doctors are ultra conservative with him, as you can understand. We weren't going to take any chances. We weren't going to put him in afterwards, even though he felt good. He said he was fine. He feels good now. He was very disappointed that he couldn't go on the ground, which is what Horse said. And I think, just as you're saying there, I don't think we necessarily need to see some of those scenes. It's very personal to him. I think, was it round 3 when he also had a bit of a knock and we saw him at the end of the game in tears. Yeah. And we could only assume that maybe he had a bit of a scare at that moment and felt that he may not have been able to play. And then we see this today where, his biggest nightmares has just come true. He's taken a knock to the head. He's failed a concussion test. And in his mind, he's never going to play football again. And you can understand how much it means to him, how much work he's put in to be here right next to his brother and playing a fantastic brand of football. So, look, I really hope he comes back. The way that Horse is talking, it tells me that they're being very conservative, as I'm glad they are. And maybe we see him back in 2 weeks' time and it's all grand.
Yeah. Look, I think his health is priority here. And we one thing we've been talking about a lot and we're really excited about is the depth that we've got. We've got a lot of players that can come in and play a role. Probably maybe not as well as Paddy. Obviously, he's a fantastic footballer, previous number 1. He just reads it really well. I mean, look at his younger brother, Tom. The McCartans just read the ball brilliantly, like some of the best in the league. So obviously he's got the 12 days off as part of the protocols, but if he needs to have more than that, then I'm fine with that. For sure. Obviously, he's probably want to get out there as soon as he can, but safety, the health and safety of the players is paramount. So, Logan as well. I didn't actually see. I saw it was a pack like a contest, but I didn't know if they replayed it. I don't know if I stepped out of the room at the time, but I just didn't really catch that one. Did you see that?
I saw a little bit of it. From what I gathered, I can't remember. Was he running back with the ball or something? Or someone was running back on the ball, but
into him.
And I think the way that I initially saw it, I thought he just took a massive hit to the stomach, and I thought he got massively winded. Yeah. When he stood up, he had a bit of a spit, and the way that the footage was, it looked like he just copped like an elbow in the chest or around the stomach. That's the way I saw it. So I missed the whole head knock of it, but it seemed like he got up. He seemed just slow to get up and went off, and then got the head concussion. So I'm surprised. I haven't heard anything from him. I haven't heard from Horse, so it wasn't mentioned in the post-game interview or anything in any of the articles to see whether he was doing well or whether it was serious. So I'm going to assume it's not serious, just protocol, I guess. And I'm glad they have this protocol in quietly because we need to protect our players, everything else.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened to Paddy. So it's really important, in the same position, right? So that's cool. Like as we were saying, all right, so we've got the depth. Let's say, I mean, they're out. They're going to be out for 2 weeks. 12 days rather. So if Papley is fit, how does the team look now?
Well, we spoke a lot about the small forwards last week. I wouldn't let go of the subject. I love it. I just find the fact that we're so deep into this, such a unique position in football is so interesting. The question last week was Wicks, Ronk, Bell. Who goes in, who goes out, who's the ones looking at the time. And I was making a strong argument for Bell. We both made a strong argument for Ronk. I felt that we both were kind of like, look, either one of them is in good position. I agree with what you said earlier in the podcast. I think that Ronk has kind of stepped up that extra line. I think he's just finding his feet. He's definitely got those extra pressure acts. In terms of tackles, you only had the one tackle, but that doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot in that role sometimes, because you're not going to finish your tackle necessarily, because the ball's moving. They've got themselves some support, so they're going to try to move the ball on. So what you're looking at is pressure acts and how you can hit the scoreboard along the way. So he's hitting the scoreboard consistently since he's come back. We know he's a very smart footballer. I think we've all been looking forward to having him back. From memory, my impression was that he actually started off his career as a mid. Am I on the right path here?
Yeah, no, I think his juniors were in the mid.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's kind of, I wouldn't say learning a new position, I wouldn't go so far as that, but I'd say that he's got skill sets, that kind of maybe grew up being a mid, that is transferring into being a crummy little goaler. So, look, I think Papley's in. Unfortunately, sorry, Bell, might say you're out for this week for no other reason than just Ronk has just been a little bit better. But I would happily take Bell overnight as well. So I'd be happy with either one of them.
So, okay, let me just get that right. So Papley's in and
Bell is out.
Bell is out. Okay, so who comes in for those two keys that we've lost, though? So we're losing a key defender and a key forward. Again, in the forwards, we've got the three tools set up. So do we keep the three tools or revert to two and then have those smalls do their thing? Let's start with the D first. So Reed or Melican or Gould. Some people are calling for Gould.
I want to see Melican back. I like the way he plays. I like the way he goes. He's a good player. He's got a bit of speed. He's a big fella.
Who can?
Millie can, of course.
That's right.
Is he far off? I mean, I haven't heard a whole lot of what's going on with him.
Yeah, look, we had a bye in the VFL this week, so but he has been playing, and I think he's just been doing what he does. He's not. I think he's a role player. I think that if he were given the job to try and intercept, I think he can do it. Remember that last quarter against GWS and the elimination final? I just remember in the fourth him just clunking like 3 or 4 or 5 intercept marks. But so I don't know if it's that he doesn't do it naturally or is not tasked to do it. But yeah, look, I'm with you. Look, I think he's a good player. It's about that depth. He's going to be more of that lockdown defender on their tallest forward. So when we put it in the context of this week ahead, we're looking at Danaher, who's a beast. He's 200 centimetres.
Yeah.
They've got McStay's 195 or 6 or 7 or whatever he is. They've also got those 2 rucks that are giants themselves that can swing forward. Excuse me. Sorry. Getting nervous about the Lions, mate. Oscar McInerney, Darcy Fort, obviously. So we do. I think we need height. I think Reed is about the same height, maybe a little bit taller. But he's been in the team this year, but he's been there as a forward and a ruck chop out. But a lot was made about his versatility, and that's why we extended him for a year. So is this the week that we see Reed officially step in as a key defender?
As a backman. Look, maybe I dare say that's probably one way we need to go, especially as you mentioned, there's a lot of tall boys over there at Brisbane in the forward half. So maybe he's the guy. He's the guy to do it, because they're going to be going for those overhead marks. That's just the way that they play as well. So you need someone with a good contested mark to be there. Yeah,
I don't know if Gould comes in that. He's in that third tall height. He's really sort of like that Dane Rampy, Robbie Fox type. That sort of versatile, can go tall if you need to, but can also kick out. He's got a lovely rebound 50 kick, and he has been playing well in the VFL, getting a fair few disposals. So it's possible he could be chosen to come in, but you would think just based on the role and the height that needs to be filled that they'd probably go for someone a little bit taller there in that regard. All right, so we're just covering it here. So if Papley's in and Reed or Melican is in for Paddy, what happens with Joey? Because Papley's going to come in and obviously take that third tall role. So Logan's out, Papley will come in.
Yep.
So are there any other forced changes to the team? Does Joey stay on the medical as the medical sub?
Well, probably, yeah. Look, probably not. Like, I think when you're talking, we were talking before about Joey, and maybe we're kind of skipping ahead about what his role really means. But we said last week, do we think he's being managed? Do we not considering he's in our best 22? I think it's a bit of both. He is in our best 22, but he does need to be managed, and they've said that from the very beginning. So, do we say? Do we basically say that we're resting him this week so that we can play him against Brisbane? Do we then rest him against the Gold Coast in order to have a better run on down the line, considering just a less dangerous team on paper? So I don't know. Like Joey, I think he's a walk-on start for this game against Brisbane. I think he just showed what he did this week, and also he's just third better player in the mids there. He just needs to be there to play against the better team.
The Lions are flying. You know, they're up with us 5-1. Huge game. They've been booting goals, right? So it's not only their forwards that are clicking. They've got a very good midfield department. They've got like Neil, who's career best again. Yep. Lyons, Berry, Zach Bailey's in there. Cam Rayner's in there. Mitch Robinson's on the wing, just running amok. So McCluggage as well, very talented footy player. They've got a lot of threats in there, and if it's one of those games where it's a pressured environment, yeah, it's at home, but, the Lions are going to bring it. Are our younger mids going to be able to stand up against, some of these, admittedly senior and very experienced AFL football players? So, I don't know. I would see Joey coming in. I think a lot of Swans fans commented on this. When he came on as the medical sub for, I think it was Logan at that point, right?
Yeah.
It just sort of felt like, oh yeah, Joey, right? Because he hasn't been playing in the midfield really. He's had a few stints in there, but he started in the defensive line, as we've commented early on, like rounds 1 and 2, and then he went to the wing and he looked a little bit more at home because it was basically the midfield. But when he was in the guts against the Hawks in the halfway through the third and the fourth, it just
natural.
It was natural. Felt comfortable. I felt assured. I don't know. And then, he had a couple of really good touches.
Had a couple of nice field kicks, which is really nice.
Isn't that funny, Chris, that when he's kicking from the midfield, it's a bit more efficient. But when he's kicking from, especially the defensive line, it's, he's very able to get the clangers going. So, I think we both say he's got to start next week, right? In your mind as well? So if that's the case, then someone who's played this week will either have to drop out of the team or go to the med sub bench. Do you think that will be Bell or another player?
Yeah, probably a Bell.
As opposed to Cunningham or...
Yeah, for sure. Especially considering how much impact someone like a Ronk had last couple of weeks, with just being that kind of super sub coming off the sideline and just having all that energy and kicking a couple. I think it's more forward in that role that can probably put a bit of pressure everywhere. Is someone that we want to have. And I think of all the places that we're kind of light on-ish would probably be in that role. I think we've got a lot of people that can roll in the mids, although, as competitive as we need them to be, that's a different story. But I think our back line is solid as hell. So, yeah.
All right, mate. Well, I think that's probably the amount of iteration. I mean, there could be a left field one. Maybe they debut Stretch McAndrew this week. Who knows? But
where's Fox?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's probably on. Yeah, maybe he's a couple of weeks away. I think he was a 6-week hammy. He has maybe 2 or 3 to go. Because he's an amazing. He really is we were very lucky to get Fox there. He's an unrestricted free agent because he's been delisted twice. So he's one of these depth players. Like we're very lucky. We've got a lot of players that are. Amati, I think, is the one that could really come back in this week if they choose to go 3 talls. And if Papley's still not ready, then it could be Amati. But it's going to be interesting. I think. We should also say Sheldrick. Again, there was a buy in the VFL. I want to follow this one up, but I read that there was a knee injury there and he was going to see a doctor to see what that was. So I'll be very interested to see what the follow-up there is this week, because it's possible it could be a pretty bad one and that'll rub out his first year, which is a shame because he showed a lot, especially in that first Giants, that round 1 game.
Another small that we kind of need to consider as well, as apart from Sheldrick, amongst everything else, Lewis Taylor. Very tidy player. He started getting better and better as the more that he played on. And then what injury he had, maybe a hammy or something. I don't know. He like last year he had to sit out, but he was looking much better. So we're stacked for some of those smaller players that can maybe play a better outside mid and small forwards in different roles. But man, I don't know. It's a good problem to have, as we said last week and every other week. It's a good problem to have, all his talent.
I mean, the other thing is, we haven't made too many changes other than managed, really. There's been a few omissions over the past 2 or 3, 4 weeks, but they've been scarce, really. And so, we won again. We got the W, and we won by 41 points, and our percentage increased a little bit. So, you're probably reticent to. You're not going to be, willingly making changes that tinker with the composition, the overall makeup too much. But at the same time, there was no game in the VFL, so you don't have the players there fresh off that week pushing their cause. Obviously, I can't remember if you said this on air or off air, but Ryan Clark has been racking it up again in the VFL. And look, I just, with all due respect, I've wanted him to do really, really well. But it just seems that every time he makes that jump up to AFL, there's some deficiencies in decision making or something. Like, can't question his work ethic. Like he'll run all day. In fact, I think he's probably our best runner in terms of kilometers. Like, he just runs and runs and runs, and because he's got that ability, he's going to get the ball. But it's that decision making and that execution that I think at times, unfortunately, has let him down at that top level. I think that he might be someone to look at as a potential, small pocket defender, because he's still only young and he's really good mates with the boys. So I think he's really good mates with Tom Papley, and he came from North Melbourne. And even though I think Kinnear Beatson had eyes on him in the draft, North picked him up, and then he obviously moved over from North to us, and he's been with us for 3, 4, 5 years. It's possible that maybe down the track he's used in the back pocket, but I don't know. He's clearly too good for VFL, but the question is, can he consistently be there in AFL? But when we've got the depth we have, even if you're getting 30 plus 37, 40 touches a game in the VFL, you're doing yourself no harm, but it's hard to come in, especially if you've got that previous track record.
Yeah.
So
it's a long season.
That's true.
We're like 6 games into a 23-game regular season, right? So we've got a lot ahead of us. I think we've got a lot of opportunities to start bleeding some of these other boys. I think Ryan Clark, as you mentioned, has got a pretty good reason why he should earn his spot in some way, and maybe that the defensive line, a hard-running defender, is a good way to go about it.
I mean, there's Robbie Fox, there's Colin O'Riordan. We've got these guys that have actually played AFL before, and then there's the Gould question, right? When is he going to come in? So it's on every single line, probably apart from Ruck at the moment. On every single line, we're just blessed for depth. And we're not just talking about guys that could probably play AFL, the guys that have played AFL and can step. Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, I'll mention Matty Roberts was also on a 12-day HIA protocols with Amati. So he will be exiting that, and if he's not showing any symptoms, he may be available for selection, because I know he's been playing pretty well in the VFL as well. But again, I just don't know if he's got that role. He's more of that sort of in and out midfielder. We've got a lot of at the moment. So if you're going to come in this week, it's either going to be through a key defender or a key tool, or they're going to tinker with the composition. But
Not this week. Don't tinker with it this week.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Not when it's the Lions. And really, if we win this game, that could be. I'm just keen to see how we go, because we have who of the best the top 8 teams. Obviously, I think it's the Cats. Just thinking about this as we go. The Hawks now. I think they are just outside the 8 now.
Yeah, so it goes Melbourne, Freo, Brisbane, us, St Kilda, Cats, Carlton, and Collingwood. So you see, and then the names that are surprising just outside, you've got Hawthorn, Crows, Bulldogs. and Richmond. So it still looks like there's a lot of movement yet to be had. But in terms of the teams that are really showing their competitiveness early on, you're looking at, Carlton, Geelong, St Kilda, Brisbane, Freo, and Melbourne. So we'll be playing a few of these teams in the next 6 weeks. So,
but I mean, that 11-point loss to the Bulldogs hurts, doesn't it? Seeing that they're now sitting at 11th, and also you never know how the Giants are going to play. I still think they're going to come home strong.
And the fact that we struggled against North Melbourne and they are coming dead last
at the moment. Yeah. But it goes to show that there's, rivalries and there's pressure on the day, any given Sunday, right? I think that's what the AFL was hoping to achieve.
Look, but on a similar thing, Tassie supporters, mate.
Yep.
Massive, sold out the game from my understanding, and days in advance. So I think that's incredible. One of my mates, Tony, he's a lifelong Swannies fan down there in Lonnie. Hey, Tony. In his own words, he's scammed into the Hawthorn President's Brunch. And he managed to sit next to Andrew Pridham, the Swans chairman, which is pretty fun. I did hit him up and asked him to talk to Andrew and see whether he'd be interested in sponsoring the podcast, but I don't think that conversation went ahead. But good on you, Tony. You're a champion, mate. Love you.
Oh, well done, mate. That's awesome. That's bloody cool. To think the podcast, the sound quality could dramatically improve.
The organisation.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's it. All right, mate. Well, one last thing. As we said, we've got the Lions at the SCG this weekend. I think it's on the Sunday. We've got a bit of a gap. Is that right?
Sunday it is. Look, I'll be up in Brisbane, unfortunately, because I'm helping one of my best mates, Mitch, move up to Brisbane. He's one of the Sydney-siders are heading up that way. He got himself a job and taking the whole family with him. So I figured I'd drive with him on the Friday all the way up to Brisbane, stay a couple of days and do some work stuff on the Monday. So I'm actually going to try to get into the Brisbane main pub or venue or wherever they watch the game, and kit it out in Swannies gear and have a couple of chats with some of the locals there,
awesome.
And seeing how much abuse I cop. So looking forward to it. So if you are a Brisbane fan and just so happens to be listening to this podcast, please reach out to us and tell me where I need to be. Be more than happy to go up there and take my share of abuse while we watch a good game together.
Nice one, mate. It could be the Valley, Fortitude Valley, or it could be South Bank. But yeah, we're best getting it from the locals. So yeah, shout out, mate. I'm going to be on holidays for the next couple of weeks with my family, which is a weird thing to say after coronavirus. But so look, I'm taking the computer. I'm online if required. Otherwise, I'm trying to get one of the other bevy members to step in. I think everyone's been a bit quiet so far, but look, we'll do our best, mate. So either way, I won't be making it to the games, but we've got a couple of the boys stepping in, and they're going to drink some beers for us. Best memory against the Lions, or worst memory against the Lions? I don't know. Nothing really jumps out. I just you got anything?
No, I just recall them being. So that 2000s. I always, the thing that my memory is basically the two Scott brothers, Brad, Chris, just being the biggest nuisances and just biggest thugs.
And they still are, mate.
And then they just rolled into different roles around the AFL and just keep doing what they do. Dissent, just being just the hardest nosed coach that you would want to play against underneath, in a good way, where he's always protecting his players. They're just a funny couple of players. They just took whatever they learned from the field and just applied it into operations at AFL.
Yeah. Look, the one thing I will say, look, I do respect Brisbane. Obviously, as you're saying, they've been very successful in the early 2000s. They had a pretty big dip, but then Fagan's brought them back really, and they're humming, to be honest. Obviously, their finals record in the past few seasons hasn't been great, but that's another reason that they're hungry. I think I see a lot of us in them. I think they see a lot of us in vice versa, them and us, in that we're clubs that have a long history, because we've been lucky enough to take those Victorian teams and relocate them. So I do think that there's that sort of it gives you that foot up when you join a new market, a rugby league or rugby union market. But I think that I've never actually been to the Gabba, but it does look like a pretty decent night out, and there's a lot of passion in the crowd you can see, and it feels like maybe it's like what it's like at the SCG. So there's a healthy dose of respect there, I think. But I'm hoping that it's a good game, and I'm hoping that we can get the win. But I'm too nervous to tip, mate.
No worries. I think that's fair. Like, don't let the tipping affect you, because I think it just comes from the heart, and that's not where, the tips necessarily are. I look, it's going to be a very competitive game no matter what. I don't really know. I haven't done my homework to really just get a good sense of where the game is going to be played out of. I think it's definitely going to be a mids contest. I think there's no doubt about that. But where it goes from there, depending on which team gets the upper hand, I still think there's a battle to be had on either side of the ground. So just a tough one.
Totally, mate. Looking forward to it. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this episode. So on behalf of the Bevy, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening in. Tune in again on Thursday night for our team announcement video and or preview post. Otherwise, make sure to keep following us on Instagram and Facebook at A Bevy of Bloods for updates and announcements. Until then, up the Bloods and can you, Swannies?
Swannies.